Welcome to Danny Houlihan's Irish Experience podcast. Join Danny on a journey through the historical island of Ireland, its people and the wild Atlantic Way, which is Ireland's last frontier. Experience the music and the culture that makes up the longest coastal driving route in the world. Now, please welcome your host, Danny Houlihan.
Cuireann fáilte go dtí slí an Atlantic Ocean. Welcome to the Wild Atlantic Way and Danny Houlihan's Irish Experience Show. I hope you all are keeping well, my friends, and if you have just joined my series, a warm welcome to you all from the banks of the Shannon River, North Kerry Ireland. During my series, I have visited many places, oh so many places, that have special connections with our past and our people and past lifeways, of old settlements, old Culdees sites where once many diverse cultures were based and wiped out over the course of time. Special places that go right to the heart of our history are sadly slowly being forgotten. But one place holds many secrets in North Kerry Ireland, that is Gale Graveyard, where once stood an old church and abbey on a former ancient site and culture now forgotten in time, and its mission, which is lost. But what remains? Only a few handwork stones that link us forever to this forgotten past lifeways. In this episode, apart from various site visits to Gale, to study its environment and materials of past lifeways that might remain as evidence to prove provenance to this episode, and to further research and study into this special place in North Kerry, I once again dig deeper, and this time micro, to uncover its hidden past. I once again use a methodological approach to this area, using as much material available, both oral, written, and landscape, and also using modern advances in technology to enhance this episode, within a framework of research carried out by myself. This is just but a snapshot of the research, due to time constraints within the podcast. There will be more. Oh, there will be more. I walked slowly along the tree-lined country road from the main Listowel Road. It was a calm day. The only sounds that could be heard was an odd car passing on the main road behind me. As I moved towards the site of Gale Graveyard, the sounds of birds were all around me, singing their hearts out in the trees, a sign of nature all around. I stopped and thought to myself, way back in antiquity, there were no public roads here like this one, and what the area must have looked like, with a blanket of dense trees surrounding the countryside. It must have been a special place, a spiritual place, and a mysterious place of ancient settlements with a deep connection with the landscape. Like other places here in Ireland, during my extensive research, when I peeled back the pages of its history, the vast amount of culture and past lifeways can be found, even when there are no records. Just because it's not there to see in front of us today does not mean it was there in the past. Today, the location of that abbey and church is marked only by a lone graveyard, surrounded by a stone wall, which holds many of the local people of the area from olden times. Also, it was used during the Great Irish Holocaust of 1845 in the area and Black 47, commonly known as the Great Irish Famine, to bury the young, the old. The numbers we don't have, but it has been stated and estimated that it was in the thousands. All that remains of their graves are the marks in the graveyard, where the large open pits were once dug. They now are covered in with grass, forgotten, but a number of plaques inside the graveyard gate commemorates our people here in their silent resting place. Site description and location. The old cemetery of Gale or Gale is geographically positioned in the old townland of Kerry Ireland, situated approximately over 3 kilometres southeast of the village of Listowel and over 5 kilometres northwest of Listowel County Kerry Ireland. National Grid reference Listowel 1.43.627.448-86.125389. The graveyard is positioned within an area best described as an open plain, but in bygone times the entire area would have had trees surrounding it. Later removed during the English colonisation of the area during the Elizabethan times. When I was surveying this old site, I looked into the question, where and what happened to the old site and the early mission that was there, and what sort of community was based in the surrounding countryside. Possibly the old Culdees or Culdees were there. The most logical explanation is that the old Culdees settlement faded out with the arrival of a more newer Christian belief and structures in the area. Some adopted the new order, and later, of course, due to invasion and domination, it took its toll on the area. The river, known as the Gale River, is located several hundred metres to the southeast of the site, not far away from the old cemetery. It was related to me many years ago by a foreign man from the area that a fjord or crossing point existed there that allowed people to cross the river. I have consulted the Ordnance Survey Map Sheet 10, Listowel, surveyed in 1841/1842, levelled in 1896 and again revised in 1937. And again its levels were revised in 1939. This shows clearly the marked graveyard of Gale and the Kerry Ireland henge within close proximity of the present graveyard. Further on the direction of Coolard, there's a place called Kerry Ireland House. There on the map is marked a fjord, which crosses a stream. South of this, in the townland of Shrone West, there's an old roadway marked on the river. And in Shrone Middle and Shrone East, as well as Shrone Bridge. Along these points, there would have been some sort of crossing point in ancient times. Stepping stones. On the map, I can see in the townland of Drumbeg to the east and Bedford to the south, there were 3 stepping stone crossing points along the river, which stretched way back into the mists of time. These stepping stones afforded the crossing of the river when it was at a certain level. The land surrounding the graveyard gradually increases in height to the northwest and in the direction of Quinuppanore Hill, 267, in the North Kerry region, is located approximately 7 kilometres to the northeast. A public secondary road runs by the front of the cemetery wall and connects from the Ballybunnan Listowel Road to the Coolard area. Contours of the area of Gale are marked from 50 rising to 100 to the east of Kerry Ireland, indicating a gradual rise in the land. There was at one time, as I've stated, a dense belt of trees, now completely felled. This can be taken from the evidence we have to this day of land drainage over the years, bringing up large sections of bog oak from the entire area. The townlands also identify the location of large oak woods with the names such as Durra West and Durra East. Durra is Irish for an oak wood. Now I turn to historical mentions of people who visited the area and the old Abbey or church during the 1800s. Historian John O'Donovan visited Gale Church and ruins in the 1800s and described the ruinous state of the church or abbey that was still standing at that time. Quote, "Nothing remains of the church but a small fragment of the east gable, 4 foot thick and built of hammered stones and lime and sand cement." Unquote. O'Donovan goes on to state, quote, "There are no antiquities in this parish by the graveyard in which the old parish church stood, which is situated on low ground in the townland of Kerry Ireland." In Irish, the place takes the name Gale, which according to O'Donovan, in its origins, was not known of, but referred to a castle built in Loughrea, County Roscommon. This was dated July 15, 1841. O'Donovan mentions St. Bartholomew's Well, which is located down the road from the graveyard to the left, which supplied any settlement that was in the area. Across the road from the present graveyard, there is a henge monument, registered in the Monuments Record in Dublin, thus indicating the presence of a former settlement of pre-Christian era in the area. It was also said that the well, now known as St. Bartholomew's Well, existed near Jane Mount, but was filled in with stones. How the well emerged in its present location, we will never know, and lost in time. Garryard Henge. Some archaeologists have stated that the Garryard Henge, which is located near the cemetery of Gale, was used for ceremonial and sacrificial practices, which puts the site in the time of the Druids in Culdees. Like I have said before, the use of proper archaeological methods and surveying should be employed in places such as Garryard, near to Gale Graveyard, to uncover more of its precious hidden history, its true history, and for future generations to study. Also, it will create employment for archaeologists to undertake such important work. It should be noted that when I visited the henge, it was very overgrown with vegetation and trees, barely recognisable, and also the fact that I consulted another map of the period which shows a mound crossing the main road. Thus the main road cuts through this archaeological site, it should be noted. Before I visited the old graveyard, I consulted the OS maps of the area to see were there any mentions of the old abbey or church ruins. Yes, there was. The graveyard has been well maintained over the years, and one can see the locations of where the mass graves, as I've stated, of the Great Irish Holocaust of 1845, 46 and Black 47 are there. A few unmarked stones are scattered here and there in the grass, a stark reminder to this generation what happened many, many years ago. This should not be forgotten, as our people that perished during that period had a vast amount of history, culture, and day-to-day knowledge of the landscape we will never in our lifetime understand or know. I paused for a moment and reflected at the plaque that has been erected just inside the wall at Gale Graveyard for those who lost their lives during the Great Irish Holocaust. No names are mentioned of these poor souls. Who were they? Where are their people now, scattered across the globe in America, England, Australia, and many other destinations? Only a green grassy graveyard is marking their final resting place, a reminder of man's inhumanity to man, woman and child, and the unborn, the legacy of the past, and a sober lesson it should not be allowed to repeat itself again. When I surveyed Gale, I noticed very quickly from my observations around me that there was an ancient settlement and past lifeways formerly within the graveyard. There were fragments of the past which could be seen, such as old Ballon stones and items which were reused from the old church or abbey at Gale. Cut stones and fragments from the building lie around and used as grave markers, a practice that was common in Ireland long ago. Thus evidence of an ancient settlement within the area of Gale or Gale, today shrouded by a graveyard. The reason I have covered this graveyard, Gale, in this episode, and there will be more, is that out there in America, Australia, England, and other destinations, our ancestors are out there looking frantically for their ancestors. Where were they buried? Gale Graveyard is one of many in Ireland which holds the ancestors of our people. A graveyard which should not be forgotten. Leaving Gale Cemetery, one can summarise that way back in antiquity there was a large settlement in the area. As any settlement needed adequate water to survive, to rear animals, and indeed to irrigate crops, this area around Gale had all of these, with the river to the south and the shelter of the high trees during the winter months and indeed summer. The ancient and pre-ecclesiastical culture would have been in the area, such as the Culdees, and thriving. As I have to point out, there are many kills and hermitage sites within several miles distance of Gale. I will go into more detail at a later stage. Once again, I must leave you all and get back out there again to uncover more of the landscape of Ireland and the famous Wild Atlantic Way route. So don't forget to follow me on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe, Danny Houlihan. Click and subscribe to see the visuals as they go up during the winter. Again, this is but a taste of our rich culture and heritage. I will see you all next time. Slán, bye.
Thanks for listening to our show. Through its people, its heritage, and its rugged coastline, this is truly Danny Houlihan's Irish experience. Bye for now.